The shutdown that Donald Trump needs and wants in order to try to change the narrative, to suck the oxygen out of the room, to stop the bad media reports about his failed administration, globally failed administration, locally, economically, and the bad polling numbers. Donald Trump decided to pull the emergency brake and do a shutdown. Then he figured he could pivot and blame the Democrats. But now there's new lawsuits that are coming out and judicial orders that are being issued because of what the shutdown is doing to the justice system. Let's start with the Department of Justice. They're out of money. They're out of gas. Sure, they get to continue to do prosecutions against like James Comey and likely do a perp walk of James Comey in advance of an arraignment. The criminal cases march on. But there is a huge civil docket that the Department of Justice is responsible for in defending Donald Trump's indefensible policy positions and his executive orders and civil liberties violations and civil rights violations. We're lurching from one abuse of power to the next, which generally ends up in a courtroom. There are several hundred cases that are non-criminal cases challenging and holding the Trump administration's feet to the fire. What happens to those? Well, the Department of Justice is busy asking for pauses and stays except in emergency bases of existing cases. They want to slow it down. They want to delay it. And judges are listening. Judge Boasberg, the chief judge of the District of Columbia Federal Court, he's often attacked by the Trump administration. He issued an order just in the last 2 days, which put a slowdown on current civil cases in favor of the Department of Justice. In other words, they're going to get an extension of time equal to the length of the shutdown because they're out of money. Now, that doesn't mean that new cases can't be filed. They can. It doesn't mean that temporary restraining orders on an emergency basis can't be filed and that the government must respond to it, because that's an essential service that has to be provided even during a shutdown. But all the rest of the cases that are out there, all those cases about voting rights attacks, immigration rights attacks, civil rights attacks, civil liberties attacks, all the cases involving, let's say, the National Guard, involving voter rights, involving Donald Trump's attacks on big law firms, on media, on schools, at the Harvard cases, that kind of thing. If they're in the District of Columbia, they are now on a slowdown. That's an advantage to the Trump administration, but it won't let them out from under the deadlines. It just extends the deadlines, the length of the shutdown. Let's say the shutdown is 30 days. It adds 30 days on. That's a new order from Judge Boasberg. So another thing civil rights groups and unions are doing in response to the shutdown is finding courts where there aren't already standing orders to slow down cases in districts. So the largest unions that are involved with federal workers, the American Federation of Government Employees, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, has filed a brand new suit. We'll be still able to talk about brand new suits, but this time in the Northern District of California, in which they are seeking to stop the reduction in force during the shutdown. What does that mean? Reduction in force is a fancy word for firings and layoffs. And Russ Vought, who's Donald Trump's henchman, who runs the Office of Management and Budget, and also was Project 2025's architect, he wants to use this shutdown as a smokescreen to shrink the government and the relationship between the American people and federal funding for programs that matter, like Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps, student assistance money, senior assistance money. He wants to shrink that even further, implementing a reduction in force during the shutdown, to which the union in its new suit questions, how can you do that? That's not an essential service. Now, the Office of Management and Budget issued a guidance on how to do a RIF, a reduction in force firings. But how do you implement that when you don't have the money to do that? In fact, those kind of questions are being fired at Carolyn Leavitt, the press secretary, about what things you can and can't do during a layoff. Let's look at her response.
Thank you for calling the White House comment line. Hello, America. This is White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Democrats in Congress have shut down the federal government because they care more about funding health care for illegal immigrants than they care about serving you, the American people. Until Democrats vote for the clean, Republican-backed continuing resolution to reopen the government, the White House is unable to answer your call or respond to your questions. We look forward to hearing from you again very soon. And in the meantime, please know President Trump will never stop fighting for you. Thank you, and God bless you.
You can see utter and complete confusion going on there because they're trying to use this as a smokescreen to shut down the government, the shutdown of the government as a smokescreen to both politically blame the Democrats, and that's already backfiring. New polling already says that the public is blaming Trump for the shutdown, and they see right through his smokescreen of blaming the Democrats. What are the Democrats trying to do? They're trying to make sure and get funding back for the American people for Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps to help the American people, while Russ Vought is canceling billions of dollars of projects that help the American people. He just canceled $8 or $9 billion worth of public works projects to improve the lives of Americans because they happen to be in the 16 states that are Democrats. He killed the transportation bill in New York to help with the new tunnel that's been on the drawing board for the last 100 years to improve commuting into the economic center of the universe, Manhattan in New York. He killed the transportation plan to extend the red line in Illinois. Remember that, voters in Illinois. And now he's using it, again, another smokescreen to shrink the government and to permanently cancel things. So we've got the lawsuits. And then finally, the last thing that's been generated as a result, as a consequence of the shutdown and Donald Trump's approach to it, is all those postings on all of the government websites, the Department of Justice, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Treasury, the Department of Agriculture, all blaming the Democrats. The radical left is responsible for this website being closed. That's a Hatch Act violation. That may be a violation of the anti-deficit laws, because they're spending money to sloganeer and to politicize. Hatch Act says you can't on the public dole do political activities. You got to do your job in a nonpartisan way. You want to wear that hat and have that tambourine, then you got to leave your job and go work for the Trump campaign directly. So there's notices that are being filed by public watchdog groups that is the beginning of a Hatch Act violation. And if they don't get redress, they don't get those files open, they're going to have to run into court on Hatch Act violations and anti-deficit law violations. So this is how the Democrats hold Donald Trump accountable and his administration and pin this tail on that donkey, or the other way around, on that elephant, for what is happening. And the good news is the American people are not falling for it. They are not falling for Donald Trump blaming the Democrats for this shutdown, because we want to fix the things that are making Americans suffer in that big, ugly bill of his. This is the opportunity. There are certain things that are worth fighting for. Sure, government services being shut down and Donald Trump's trying to exploit it and take advantage of it was something that we calculated, but we have to hold him responsible. All of his calculated, too smart by half attempts to exploit the shutdown to further harm Americans is being seen by the Americans and being seen by voters and showing up in polling already. So that's a good thing. But I wanted to bring to your attention what's happening on the civil cases in federal court because of the shutdown and the new orders that are coming out, the new Hatch Act violation allegations, the new lawsuit that you can't use the shutdown as an excuse to fire people and furlough them more on a reduction in force plan, and the unions leading the charge there in courts like the Northern District of California. And criminal cases continue. So we're going to see the perp walk that's been threatened, where James Comey, former U.S. attorney and former FBI director, he's going to have his handcuffed and he's going to do a perp walk, which is Exhibit A in his vindictive prosecution suit. So I guess if they want to waste money on that, taxpayer dollars on that, so be it. It'll be to Comey's advantage. We'll follow it all. I'm glad you're here to kick off Sunday morning on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button, come over to Legal AF Substack, do the exact same thing. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.